You can use your Mach 3 software to put wording on a quilt using the robotic system if you want, and it's very easy to do. There's a couple different options. For the first, the most direct one, we're going to choose this draw menu, and I'm going to leave it with the mouse selected and say begin drawing. And then I'm going to actually just use a stylus on my computer screen. Let's do Mom, and then you're going to say accept, and that's editable. It'll be stitchable. Try to do it kind of big. It will stitch out better than if you reduce it down. You'll get a much smoother appearance to it. But there's a couple things that you can do to edit it if you're not crazy about something or if you need to connect some letters. So I'll go back to the draw menu, and you've got your nodes that you can edit. I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm not going to do much, but maybe I want to smooth out this part of the M. So I'm going to go down here to select segment, and you click on one point and then the end point, and you'll see that that turned a darker blue, that segment, and I can say preview and it will smooth that out, which makes it easier to edit if I want to go in and say accept. Go in and actually edit some of these handles. Sorry about the dog noise in the background. So that is one way you can have, you know, Grandpa sign his name on the screen and then actually stitch that out, or do something to personalize a pillow or something using the draw menu actually with the stylus on the screen. Okay, the other way you can put text on a quilt is to go back to your draw menu, and you have this text category here with a huge long list of different fonts that you have no idea what they look like. And so I want to show you how you can preview those fonts. If you go to your computer Explore menu and choose this PC, the C drive, Windows file, and then fonts, you can see that it'll show you an example of what they're actually going to stitch out like. So let's see, let's find one that we like up here. How about this bow house? So we'll go back in and use that in our Mach 3 software. So I'll go up and choose that. And then in this text box, you're going to do some lettering. So let's do so. And I'll say create. And it puts it in some funny places sometimes, but let's go ahead and transform, bring this back down to our sewable area. Now this would stitch out, but you're going to have a start and stop on every letter. And actually this font works out pretty well because it will come up and catch the inside of this E. Other fonts don't necessarily do that. But one thing you can't do much of is editing this. I can't make the letters closer together. I can't split them up. So there are times that I'll actually do each letter individually and place them, and so I can manipulate them a little bit more. But this would have a lot of starts and stops, and I can't do anything to go in and alter those. And so you might want to, I can come in here with the nodes and do some things, but there's limitations to what I can do with it. So one other option that you can use with that is to place your letters using the font options, and then we'll do some tracing over it to make it look better and for it to sew continuously. Okay, I've placed these letters individually, not as a whole word, but just one letter at a time. And let's go ahead and do a W with it. And a great enhancement would be if this actually showed previews in this. I know on my Mac it does that, but maybe that's not a PC thing. So this font is called Happy Sands. And so I'm going to do my W, and it pops it way up there. So I'll use transform and pull that down, and I can snug these up to each other so I can actually get this to where it's going to sew continuously. I want to show you how to do that next. So get them where you want. This is sort of a whimsical one, so I don't have to worry about aligning it too much. But what I'm going to do now that I have those placed is I'm going to select them, and I'm going to DQ them and lock them. So select it again, And that way I'm not going to accidentally move anything down. And I'm actually just going to trace over these but make it continuous. And so I'll start that process. So back to my draw menu. And what I like to use is the arc tool. And I'm going to say begin. I have it set to do it from my mouse. So I'll say begin. And I start between the first and the second letter. And so remember when you're using the arc tool that when you place, the first click is the first part of the arc, the second one is the last part, and then your third click is the curve. And so I'm just going to kind of slowly work my way around this. And you don't have to be too precise because you can come back, I'll keep that nice and straight, come back and edit it when you're done. So click my curve there. Just work in really small sections at a time because otherwise you won't be able to curve things like you want. So maybe here. And I'm not going to close the shape up. I'll come down here and leave a little space. And then I'm going to jump to the next shape. And remember the second click is the far end, and then I'm going to come back here just to click that. And I'm going to start sewing around the top of my E. So at this point I'll do all the tops of the letters. When you get to this point, I want to come up and catch the center part of that E. So it's not a separate part. I don't want any tie-offs, as few as I can possibly get. So click it around here. Should have picked a shorter word. So same thing here. As I get close to my next letter, I'm going to come out and start that. We've got some nice straight lines here. Click around. This is kind of like watching paint dry, I'm sure. These are sort of gentle curves. This is a fun font. I like this font. And now I'm going to go back and catch the bottom of all the letters. And so that will actually sew continuously. So come across here, have a little bridge. It's kind of straight. And I'm done. So I'll actually stitch over here and then right click to deselect that. And that is all one continuous sew path. So it doesn't take very long. It's still a lot faster than hand embroidering it. And one thing that's kind of fun to do, you can go ahead and delete this other one if you want, but you could go ahead and export this as a pattern. And so you can use it again in the future. It's completely resizable. You can come in and clean it up with your nodes if you want. But I'm pretty happy with that. But what I'll do is, if I want it to be heavier on the quilt, then I'll use a spaghetti thread by Wonderfill, which is a 12-weight cotton, and so it looks like hand stem stitching. Or if you don't have a heavier thread handy, if it's not too big of a design, then you can come in and let this stitch out and complete, and then just toggle it unsewn without moving your head and let it sew a couple more times. You can even reverse the middle one so it goes forward, backwards, forward, and you'll get a nice heavy line on there. So it's fun to put dates and weddings and birth dates and names and all that kind of stuff on your quilt. So that is how you can do some lettering. One last thing I wanted to mention, because I don't want to forget it down the road, is another thing that you can do in the draw menu is create tie-offs or kind of a reinforced stitch. This is where the stitch starts and stops on this. And if I left it the way it is, I might have a little gap in the stitching. This is the letter as it's actually designed using the font option. This is not the one I retraced. But if I wanted to kind of secure starts and stops on any pattern, I would actually overlap it like this and go down here to add points and add a couple more points on there. And so now what I'm going to do is click on transform just to kind of get back in this where I can edit this. So I could drag this around and have it double over itself, and so that would reinforce the stitching and I wouldn't have any visible gaps. Another thing you can do, is you can do this on the start and stop of a pattern. So let's bring this one over, and maybe at the edge of the quilt I want to reinforce it. So I'll go to the draw menu, and I never change the very first and the very last node because that can affect how it goes into repeat. And you would only do this at the beginning of a row. You wouldn't be doing this on each individual pattern. But if I wanted that to secure without much effort, I can grab the second node, bring the third one up close, and then bring this back around, and that will back tack very precisely over there. So it's a way to create starts and stops in the draw menu.